then as the clock ticked into the second quarter, Hugo Keenan was forced to gather the ball deep in his own 22, and he just couldn't get his footing right to clear, meaning England had a great attacking opportunity. And all I could think at that moment was that if he's getting rattled, then we could well be in a spot of bother here. But on the next attack, I reckon the side got a massive lift as our defensive muscle memory kicked in to hold the English out, Conor.
Yeah, and they went 11 phases where that initial line out happens at, I think it was about 11 meters or so, maybe 12 meters out from our try line. And as that play develops, the closest they get, and it's not immediate, the closest they get is about 5 meters, and then it's constantly going backwards, 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 backwards. They got absolutely driven off the ball as much, well, not driven off the ball, but certainly driven away from the try line. I wish they'd been driven off the ball, would have made it a little easier to get a clearance out of it. But just consistently being driven back. And it's incredible how strong our defense has been for this whole series. You know, it's a really good example, that 11 phases where you've got fellas who are shooting out of the line a little bit and maybe pushing themselves a bit too hard, but they're doing it because they know there's a man behind me who's going to fill that space. And I'm not worried that the line will have a gap. That line will be filled and I'll get back around and I'll make that next tackle and I won't get it wrong. And you see a perfect example of that in those 11 phases where James Lowe just shoots up a little bit too hard, gets wrong-footed as the player can skip past him. But 2 phases later, as the ball is coming out, he's the man there shoving the player into touch. And it's that kind of a strong mental attitude, that thing of it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to be wrong, because we can pick ourselves up and we can get it right on the next phase. It's all phase by phase stuff. And when it comes to defensive effort, having that mentality, having that knowledge that somebody's got my back, somebody's covering that space. So I'm going to try something here and hope for the best, but I'll get round and cover him just in case he makes a mistake for the next one. I don't mean to steal your thunder, Cian, but I did go looking at a few stats when it comes to.
Ooh,
I know.
Fighting talk.
No,
fighting
it's
talk.
not. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, I'm sure.
There you go. We'll go with that.
But the stats I was looking at, just from our defense, is tackles made and tackles missed. And then the other one that I thought was important was number of tries conceded. With number of tries conceded, it's 1 for every team except Italy, who got 2. And 4 of those teams we then went on to put a bonus point on, which is huge. But the tackle count, Wales, it's 172, missed 10. France was 177, missed 38. About 9 of those were leading up to their try, I'm sure of it. 141, missing 24 against Italy. 181, where we missed 27 against Scotland. That was the only game where we had more tackles than the opposition. And then yesterday, 154, missing 15. Those missed ones, a lot of people would look at that stat and say, that's a lot of tackles to miss. But I think it's because the defensive structure allows for people to take that little bit of a chance, to push up that little bit extra, because somebody else is filling in the space. And if you look at, when we get to half time and England are at that stage still on 6 points, weren't they? Yes. I think they're still on 6 points at half time. And, they got 1 try, and we'll talk about that later, and they got 1 more penalty because the defensive structure works. It's amazing to see the difference between the Joe Schmidt style and the Andy Farrell style, where with Joe Schmidt, it's no, run that play again. You were 0.8 of a second behind where you needed to be, or you were half a yard too far back or too far forward, whatever. Run it till you get it right. Whereas now the lads seem to have a bit more freedom, a bit more opportunity to say, let's see what I can do. And that seems to be spreading through into the defensive structures as well. And I think that the one man who's not going to get enough enough praise for how well our defence has been is Simon Easterby. You know, because everyone will talk about, isn't Andy Farrell great? And there's a grant. Yep, Andy Farrell's great. So is John Fogarty. So is Mike Catt. So is Paul O'Connell. But so particularly is Simon Easterby. You know, because just looking at the number of tries conceded, that's huge to only be given away. I mean, we scored 20 tries in total and conceded 6. And if you know that your defense is working that well, that you're only conceding 1.25 of a try per game versus scoring an average of 4 a game, the confidence that gives fellas to know we're getting all of that right so we can be creative and we can make scores happen, knowing that we're going to do all that stuff right because that's what's been drilled into us really well. And yeah, Easterby deserves his own private little Grand Slam plaque for making that a possibility. I think he's done phenomenal work.
Absolutely. I mean, I saw a tweet just before we started on Twitter. I can't remember. I think it might have been the Loose Head. He put up a tweet, just a general tweet, says, I'm racking my brains trying to pick one Irish player who was the best of our best from the Six Nations. And I would put forward, if it was possible, if you could do a collective one for the defense as a sort of the overall beast of Ireland's defense. That was the rock on which, and this game in particular was the rock, because you look at that first half and you're like, well, England dominated that. You came out of it like, oh my God, England are on top and we couldn't score, whatever. But then if you just flip it a little bit, especially with that stand, but also throughout the half, there was no way they were scoring a try. It wasn't happening. The best they could do was they won a couple of penalties and popped them over for points, but they weren't getting it. It's just it's the organization. It's the knowing, the knowing where the contact point is going to be. It's knowing when to have 2 tacklers. It's know when to have 1 and then fanning out. They seem to know at every point what kind of personnel they need at that point of contact, and it slows them down. And then they push them back as well. The amount of times they push them back, and the defense literally went right to the very, very end of the match as well. It's just amazing to watch. And those missed tackles, you're saying, like, you know, we talk about stats. One of the most misinterpreted stats is the tackle count. And you say Gary Ringrose gets tagged with a lot of missed tackles as well. But the fact is, he may have missed his guy, but he made that guy step, and he knows there's going to be a couple of guys behind him to get him down, and that's already slowed down the play. So it does play a part in what happens. What do you make of it, Kino?
Yeah, we should be talking about Simon Easterby in the same breath as Sean Edwards.
Yeah,
we absolutely should. I do love that systemic shooter system that we do seem to have now, where you are using the tackle to. It doesn't have to be an effective tackle, but what you're doing is you're cutting off the outside, absolutely, and you are putting them into a hard shoulder, and it actually, I think, gives you better opportunities to get in a chop and a jackal as well. So it certainly has its advantages. I took my own look at the stats as
really?
well. Around it. I know.
Get out of here.
Probably a more efficient look as well, I might add. But go on.
We're going to get decimals now. There's decimals coming.
No, I've stayed away from the decimals. One of my favorites, actually, no, there's decimal here in this first thing. My favorite one is England had 1 line break that entire game. One line break in the entire, you know, they played well. They were absolutely shut down in attack. Ireland made 90.3% of their tackles, which is right up there with, that's the second best. If it was over the whole tournament, it'd be the second best rate. But made 13 dominant tackles to England 6. Like, we're not used to seeing Ireland making large numbers of dominant tackles, especially against a big side like England. I think my favorite stat from this weekend altogether was tries conceded in the 2023 Six Nations was Italy 22, Wales 19, England 18, France 14, Scotland 12. Tries conceded in 2022 and 2023 combined, Ireland 10. That gives you an idea. That it emphasizes how good systemically the defense is, because that's over 2 years.
that stat should tell you that Sean Edwards and Simon Easterby shouldn't be in the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
That it should be Simon Easterby and then Sean Edwards.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that France stat this year, that France defense this year is not the same beast as it was last year at all.
No.
To me, I see three different aspects of the defense in the stats. Turnovers, discipline, and line out. It's kind of slightly not looking directly at tackles made, tackles missed, because as you said, that can be very, very misleading. With the most turnovers in the campaign at 35, the next highest was Wales at 22. Of those 35, 15 were won in the tackle. Again, the highest amount out of all the teams. To me, that ties in directly with discipline. We had the lowest number of penalties conceded at 44 and the lowest number of offside penalties at 2 for the entire campaign, 2 offside penalties. The only team with 0 cards at all. It just reflects a team that's incredibly well drilled, as well as really good judgment as to which rucks to actually attack. Because otherwise, you've got maybe one man on the ground and you've got 14 in the line, or 13 in the line, 1 back, 12 in the line, 2 back, whatever you need for the situation. But you've got that wall, constantly that wall. You've got lads bouncing up off the ground out of the tackle and back into the wall, and they're there before the ball is out.
There's an enthusiasm for that bounce up as well.
Yeah,
it's not a thing of, I better pick myself back up. It's, made that tackle, great work, let's go do another one. And they're so enthusiastic to be where they're meant to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of finding the joy in defense. It's a wonderful thing if you can make it happen, because I think that was one of the big problems France had for years, was that it was kind of defense optional at times. You'd have lads huffing and puffing and slow to get up and slow to get back, and lazy runners and all that. So Sean Edwards did make a huge difference with that, and that was the making of the French side that we see at the moment. But I think we have absolutely the equivalent here, with guys who are really, really motivated to implement it. Last bit is that we joint best defensive lineout record in the competition as well, which is a really important part of defense. 7 stolen lineouts over the course of the competition. Denying teams a safe port from which to launch plays. They don't know that they have a line out if they go down the line. They don't know if they have it in open play with the level of turnovers we're getting in open play. It causes difficulties for opposition decision making, and I think we saw that reflected in England opting to take the kicks early on. They knew that they'd be rolling the dice going for a try early on, so they needed to get those points in to start building a little bit of pressure, start building a little bit of doubt in the Irish minds, which is very smart, very pragmatic, but it also speaks a lot to Irish defense.
Yeah, definitely. It was, I always say about the defense is like, you see YouTube highlight reels of tries, big hits, offloads and anything, but you never see 20-phase defensive stands, the world's 10 best. But personally, I could look at them, especially, you know what I mean? So because when you know what's going into them, and it's just it's such a huge part of the modern game, and I think it's just the bedrock of what Ireland's achieved in recent times.